So the first one is to your point, kind of matches. You match levels.
Mhm.
It takes courage to be
Yes.
vulnerable.
Yes.
This is an act of leadership courage or courageous leadership. Okay, that's what this is. So this is not for the faint of heart. So if
Mhm.
you really want to challenge yourself to be a courageous leader, take this on because it's hard. Because you're going to use it in situations where people are armored up, and
Mhm.
you're going to walk in the door and drop all your armor and weapons. And
Mhm.
that's going to invite them to do the same thing. So I'll share with you a kind of a fun example. So this was some years ago. I was working with a company that is a private company, but they work with prisons. So essentially,
Mhm.
prisons all around the U.S., whether they're government prisons or state prisons, they'll often outsource the management of those prisons to other companies, private companies like this one. So this company has wardens that they put into these prisons. And so I'm doing this workshop with all these wardens. So we've all seen movies with prison wardens, right? Shawshank Redemption, okay,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we kind of get that. That's not what these guys were like at all. And women, they were the most laid back, kind of had this like quiet, kind of counselor, therapist, priest kind of vibe about them.
Mhm.
A little overweight, glasses, just calm and chill. And I was in the line for food one day during one of these workshops I was leading. And I turned to one of them next to him. I said, "You're not at all what I expected with prison wardens." They said, "Yeah." They said, "There's a reason for that." They said the inmates, the whole community, they feed off of the energy of the leader.
Mhm.
We're all, then they're going to be all, and we're going to have a lot of riots on our hands.
Yes.
But if we're very calm and relaxed, they're going to be calm and relaxed too. So I love that
Mhm.
idea of sometimes we've got to be the first one to change that dynamic. Now, the last thing I would also
Yeah.
offer in this, as you've talked about, Randy, is this is really powerful in the right doses, and when you don't need a lot of it. So you
Yes.
don't need to overload vulnerability. Then that
Yes.
will start cutting into your credibility. So
Yes.
I want to be careful. We're not saying be vulnerable in every single conversation. That's not what we're saying. We're saying it is a tool to use in the right circumstance that is very powerful.
Right.
And
Right.
so I'll give you a more of a generic example. Like if I joined your team and the first day of me coming to work in your organization on your team, I came and sat down and said, "Hey, everybody, I'm really excited to be here. I just want to learn. I'm going to take lots of notes. I just want to get a better sense of how we operate. I don't know much about your culture, don't know much about kind of what makes you all successful.
Mhm.
So I'm just going to spend some time really learning and asking lots of questions." Well, you all would say, "Gosh, we like this Brandon guy. That's a little bit of vulnerability I'm leading with." Now, if every meeting for the next 6 months, I come down and sit down and give you that same preamble. I
Mhm.
don't know anything. I'm just here to learn. You all
Right.
have all the answers. I'm just taking notes. At some point, you're going to say, "Why did we hire this guy? Like, I
Yeah.
thought he was going to eventually do something for
Sure.
us."
Sure.
So we don't do it all the time, but in the right doses, when we need to change the dynamic, invite people in, drop armor and weapons, like those inmates, for example, it can be a really powerful tool. So I just want to give a couple more kind of final thoughts on my end around how we might think about it and how we might use it.
All good stuff. And I think what I'm about to say, which will be a nice pivot from what you said, probably is going to create the need for another show on this. So earlier, closing thoughts. Earlier, I talked about vulnerability invites vulnerability. I want to reverse that because I was talking about the leader being vulnerable can invite others to be vulnerable. But another way to look at that is someone on the team is sharing something that you can tell is obviously it's a form of vulnerability. One of the greatest ways that we can show empathy to our colleagues is to say, you know what? Thanks for sharing that. I've been through something similar. A colleague could share, I'm going through a painful divorce right now. Oh, I've dealt with that myself or whatever it is. So there's an interesting sort of other way to think about transparency or vulnerability, inviting vulnerability is as a leader, making sure people know that you really hear them. I've heard you say with humor many times when someone says something and you respond with, that's great for you. That's a horrible response.
Good for you.
Good for you. So anyway, that's one point I'd close with. The other thing I would do, and this is probably going to create the need for another show on this, is we often talk about, and we had a show not long ago about teaching Gen Z, teaching young professionals, and what we can learn from them and what they can learn from us. Great show, one of my favorite conversations. But I want us to think about if you're a team member, maybe you're a young professional, maybe you're a little bit more established in your career. One of the things that you can do with vulnerability is share, hey, I'm struggling with this aspect of my job. And don't stop there with the revelation that I'm vulnerable here, but then go on to say, I would really love your help. Can you guide me, teach me, show me how to do this? So taking your vulnerability, to your point, it takes courage to say, I'm not good at this, but then immediately ask for help. So if you're a team member, a young professional, you could be a senior executive, doesn't matter. One of the ways that you can utilize vulnerability and connect it to learning is to say, I'm struggling, but I could sure use your help to get better at this.